Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. Now, I think it goes without saying that security has not developed at an equal rate to software innovations over the last few decades. And this has led to cloud-native, organically evolving security to be coherent with how software is made today. And being able to create disposable layers of protection on certain scales of attack has prevented security bottlenecking and allowed eager users to implement cloud-native. Nevertheless, questions are increasingly being posed as to the consequences of relying on such solutions and whether they are reliable or adequate to deal with the risks in the current landscape. So today I've invited Thorsten Geissel from Tufin onto the podcast, and we're going to talk about traditional versus cloud-native applications, the biggest risks of relying on cloud-native security solutions, whether cloud-native tools are strong enough, how collaboration can be maintained and amplified, and of course the biggest risks of relying on cloud-native applications on their own. So buckle up and hold on tight, because I'm going to beam your ears all the way to Cologne in Germany, where Thorsten is waiting to speak with us. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, hey Neil. Thanks for having me today. My name is Thorsten Geissel. I'm age 43 at the moment and living in Germany, more specific Cologne. My wife and I, we have 2 teenagers at home, so it doesn't get too boring from time to time. The family loves joint activities as well as travel. So today I'm working for Tufin as a sales engineering lead across the EMEA region. So my teams are the trusted advisors for large enterprises across the region. They consult our customers on questions regarding digital transformation, IT and security automation, and change process optimization. On top, they are delivering fundamental technical details during a sales cycle, conducting demos or proof of values together with technical presentations on stages at large-scale industry events.
Well, it sounds like you're incredibly busy there at the moment, both in the office and outside the office too. But I always like to learn a little bit more about how my guest got here. So can you share your origin story and where your passion for tech came from, or what it was that lit the spark and put you on this path you're on today?
Yeah, great question. So I've all my professional life, I've worked in network and more specifically in the security industry. And I've seen the different sides of it, having worked for vendors, but also system integrators and for enterprises across various industries. So never really left Cologne. So I guess it's a great place to be and also to live and also for business. So we have large enterprises here with EMEA or even worldwide footprint, not so far away. And I can choose comfortably between 3 airports when traveling. So on the other hand, so what did lit the spark? So I think this goes way back into my childhood. I remember my father bringing home one of those very early IBM personal computers in the 80s when I was growing up. And I found it tremendous that he even bought a hard disk that was almost the same size of the personal computer itself. Yeah, it had a nice orange monochrome display. And that's where I made my first experience then with program languages as well as spreadsheets. Later then, when I finished school, I decided to take on the journey and applied for professional training, which is kind of common here in Germany. And during that, I was given the opportunity to tour all of the different business units on a large IT organization. And it turned out that the network and security department was the one which was most interesting to me, but also had the best people and mentors in it. So, and then I kind of stick to it. It's, that's the story.
I love that. And it's amazing how many people were inspired by those early computers in the 80s there. And of course, it was that path that would end up leading you to Tufin. So for people that are hearing about it for the first time, it is a policy-centric approach to security and IT operations. But can you expand on that and offer a brief overview?
So Tufin put the policy, and more specific, the security policy, into the center of IT and the operations. So the process of network security automation is automating the request, the analysis, the implementation, and of course the validation then of rules and privileges that define the access and the connectivity across an organization's on-premise, public and private cloud IT infrastructure and all the associated network security controls. So the network security automation can help the customers implement those changes in minutes instead of days, save times and valuable resources, reduce the risk of breach or outages, and also maintain continuous compliance with industry regulations and internal policies and best practices. But let me stop and ask a question. Without knowing what good looks like, how would you defend the caster? So the answer is kind of Tufin's unique unified security policy, or shorter USP, which enables customers to configure networks, zones, and traffic relations between those while being agnostic to and covering all the major security vendors, network, SDN, and cloud platforms.
And just to set the scene, we'll start with a question here. What would you say are the pros and cons of a traditional versus cloud-native applications?
So in recent conversations with our customers and prospects, we are hearing about the transformation that has taken place to move the traditional applications that run on-premise and are multi-tiered into cloud environments. So we hear about several different approaches to achieve the goal of transforming those applications. But the two we hear the most are lift and shift of applications, and on the other hand, recoding and refactoring of full refactoring of applications to take the full advantage of cloud-native capabilities. So both of them are very fundamentally different approaches. So the first one, lift and shift, they take existing on-premise network workloads that typically run in a data center scenario and move them one-to-one into a cloud environment. Customers tend typically to secure those lift and shift applications with the same security controls they know and use already on-premise. That might be traditional firewall vendors with their cloud derivatives, or sometimes even cloud-native firewalls like the Azure or AWS firewall. The benefits here are that network and security teams can use the same management and orchestration approach they use for securing the on-prem networks. On the other side, lifting and shifting applications doesn't take the full benefit of all the advantages that the hyperscalers offer to their customers. I'm thinking about the scaling and integration benefits. Also, it requires more overhead in terms of compute and even organizational to achieve a similar flexibility as with cloud-native applications. On the other hand of the spectrum, we see large organizations taking the cloud-native approach and making full use of the benefits that are offered. So, for example, using a cloud-native, flexible, scalable database service instead of running and maintaining several database servers with a load balancer to manage traffic and scale up and down. Obviously, this requires more effort because applications would sometimes to be developed from scratch to take full advantage of cloud-native deployments. It also leaves security and traditional networks teams with a dilemma. They need to shift their mindset away from IP addresses and ports into tags, availability groups, security groups, and more. How would they secure a database or identity service they are just about to consume as a SaaS service from a hyperscaler? And to put another dimension on complexity, some organizations spend a single application across more than one cloud provider or combine it with on-prem hosted services that could be also part of the same application. So all of those are typical questions and concerns we are discussing with our clients on that topic.
And I think so many businesses are attracted by the flexibility that cloud-native applications can offer. But of course, having all your eggs in one basket also increases a certain element of risk. So what would you say the biggest risks are of relying solely on cloud-native applications?
I like to quote our CTO to answer that. So he said, you cannot secure what you cannot see, what you don't know or you don't understand. Security teams need to be able to see and assess risk that arises from putting applications into cloud-native environments and using those services. With Tufin, we enable those teams, security, network ops, and DevOps, to, let's say, put the guardrails and the centralized security policy into place, then also to understand the potential risk to their businesses for cloud, on-prem, and the hybrid environments, to enable end-to-end connectivity for their business change requests, to keep audit records of all those requests and take actions, and last but not least, giving them the visibility into their own cloud ops work.
And with the flexibility of hybrid working and being able to work from anywhere, any device at any time, it's also raising a few big security questions. So what would you say the biggest risks are of relying on cloud native security solutions from a security standpoint?
Yeah, good. So we covered kind of the cloud native applications with the last questions. Now to answer this one, so the cloud native security solutions do exactly that, right? Yeah. They are very good at looking into those applications that solely reside into the cloud. Sometimes they are even bound to a single hyperscale vendor. So with those solutions, it will be very difficult to take full control of the other cases I described earlier, right? So customers lifting and shifting applications or running hybrid flavors applications that reside both in cloud and on-prem. So also using either only traditional security controls or a mix of traditional and cloud native ones could lead to a blind spot, seeing only half of the story, right? And as we already spoke about, if you cannot see it or you are not aware of something, it becomes very hard to be able to secure it. So does this organization that claims hosting most of their mission critical apps in the cloud really doesn't have a backhold into the data center or on-prem hosted databases? So more often, we hope this is the case, and we see traditional security controls in charge of protecting those. And this is where cloud-native solutions then fall short and provide not the full visibility. Tufin provides a single interface, a single pane of glass, if you want, to look at all of those controls.
So as someone that's having lots of conversations with your customers all over the world and obviously offering solutions as well, do you have any examples of how you've worked with a business to overcome issues like everything that we're talking about here?
One of the probably more prominent examples here is one of the large retailers. So they are expanding heavily into the cloud with a subset to start off of their business critical applications. So their NetSecOps team, they are using Tufin since a long time to manage and streamline their on-prem security operations. So they know what we are doing. And this team now has been tasked to take control of the cloud security too. And this left them with several challenges. So first, they needed to know what workloads are going to shift where and how they would have visibility on them. And additionally, they were thinking about which security controls would be best suited for their needs. In the end, after they investigated their options, they have chosen the Tufin suite to gain overall visibility of their hybrid networks and then choose the appropriate controls that are needed to secure the migrated hybrid applications into the cloud.
Obviously, silos is a big deal right now, and especially with people working in multiple locations, and it can be difficult to keep that engagement and keep everyone collaborating together. So do you have any tips or advice on how to break silos for different teams and help foster a culture of collaboration and ensure that essentially everyone moves forward together?
Sometimes in organizations, we see teams operating in different silos, as you say, right? So different teams with different goals, not going into the same direction, but sometimes working on the same project. So teams then also not speak the same languages. So for example, where does the security policy reside? Is it NetSec's operations? Is it on the enforcement devices? Does it reside on management systems or even directly in the code? So the NetSecOps team, they are talking IP addresses, ports, protocols, firewalls, right? On the other hand, the CloudOps teams, they are talking about tags, security groups, Terraform templates, CloudFormation templates, and so on. And they embed infrastructure and security directly into their code. So now using tools that understand both worlds and be able to translate where needed can help not only bridge that gap, but also you need to understand how the other team operates, what are their daily routines, and which tools they are using.
And I think over the last 2 years, we've seen people recruited online, onboarded online, and then working with distributed teams scattered around the world without actually sitting next to or speaking to their colleague face to face. So in these kind of environments, and especially hybrid working environments, how can this collaboration be maintained and amplified, would you say?
So operating cross-functional project teams is also one of the methods to overcome the existing difficulties, right? So automate as much as possible. So we are an automation company. So with an automated orchestration tool that understands and can help with the automated deployment of both worlds, right? Again, taking the translation aspect back into context and also bringing together the traditional security controls and then automatically call the cloud native ones and embed the security as early as possible into their development cycle.
Well, I love chatting with you today and cannot thank you enough for coming on, Matt. We did start the podcast, though, talking about your origin story and that IBM PC in the 80s. But as we come full circle, I always like to ask my guests to leave everyone listening with a personal touch of inspiration by sharing either a book that has inspired them that we can add to our Amazon wish list, or just a go-to song that you like to listen to, get your head in a zone, or something that's important to them. So what are you going to leave us with today? And is there a story to accompany your choice?
I would like to recommend and go with the new album of the German band Rammstein. It's called Zeit or Time in English. And I'm really looking forward because I booked tickets for a concert and they have a really great show. So really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I saw them a few years ago too. That is one hell of a show that they put on, isn't it? With the pyrotechnics and
Yes.
I think the last one I saw there was a big wall and they welded their way through the wall and then burst onto stage. But it's something else, isn't it? Great to see them live, and also quite strange to see 15,000 English people singing German songs as well. It's quite amusing.
Yes.
Excellent. Well, before I let you go, for anyone listening that just wants to find out more information about Tufin, explore the topic that we've discussed today, or even reach out and contact a member of your team, what's the best starting point?
Yeah, so we have Twitter, so it's at Tufin Tech. Check us out on the web, tufin.com. Or, you can also use my private email address. It's Thorsten@tufin.com if you have any questions.
As I said a few moments ago, a big thank you for coming on the podcast today, for talking about topics that will resonate with every business leader, from traditional versus cloud-native applications, the biggest risks of relying on native cloud security solutions, and whether cloud-native tools are strong enough, and of course, for sharing your story. But just a big thank you for sharing that with me today.
Thanks for having me, Neil. Thanks.
So a big thank you to Thorsten for joining me on the podcast, talking about the risks of relying on native cloud security solutions and breaking silos for different teams to foster collaboration. But of course, these are big topics for every business leader, wherever they're located in the world, and whether it be a small startup, an SMB, or a huge enterprise. So this is where I'm going to turn the microphone back to you. You've heard from me, you've heard from Thorsten today and the work they're doing at Tufin. But how are you navigating these uncharted digital waters? As always, please let me know. Let's keep this conversation going. techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. Just look for me, Neil C. Hughes. And if you'd like to come on the podcast and share your story, you can do that. Or equally, if you've just got a quick question, we can do that too. So today we've talked about the biggest risks of relying on native cloud security solutions and cloud native applications. But what we're going to talk about tomorrow, yes, it's time to spin the wheel, which will determine what we will talk about tomorrow. But if you want to find out where that wheel stops and what we're going to talk about, for that, you're going to have to come back and open up your podcast feed bright and early tomorrow, when I'll be waiting there like a bad smell once again. But a big thank you for listening as always. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.